All right. Good morning, and welcome to the Morning Report. My name is Willie Lawson, and the Morning Report is a production of FightBackMedia.com, FightBackMedia.com, FightBackMedia.com. I hope that the last Morning Report I did, which was basically all George Floyd and about the trial and about all the things, my views on everything that happened there, was enjoyable to you, and it was hopefully was thought provoking. And I hope that I could act as a thermostat, not a you know, not a thermometer really, and jack things up. That's really the whole deal. I think a lot of us who have any sort of, I don't know, notoriety. I got my daily task to do. Don't worry about it. I'm getting pretty good at it. Have kind of a responsibility to decide that we're going to act as thermostats, not necessarily thermometers. Thermometers measure and sometimes incite, activity. Where all we're trying to do here really is to so if we can turn things down on some things, fine. If we need to turn things up, then we turn things up. But it's just something that actually, for a year or so, I've really wanted to. There you go. Certainly. Be more of a thermostat than a thermometer, really. Because being a thermometer is easy. Being a thermometer is like being a doctor who can diagnose a problem. Your leg is broke. Okay, so what you gonna do about it? Well, your leg is broke. Yeah, I know. Uh, I can see because the bone is sticking out of the skin. So what are we gonna do? Well, your leg is broke, and we have a lot of that. We have an awful lot of that going on, and I don't think that that's necessarily the way that we ought to go here at Fight Back Media. We need to start being a little bit more reasonable, and a little bit more solution based, and a little bit more responsible. So, not that we weren't responsible before. Actually, we are the most responsible of all of the people who are out here on YouTube, I think, and the people who are doing what trying to do what we're doing. All right. Well, I hope you liked it. All right, some good news here in Hillsborough County. Those of you who are watching local, I ran some numbers this morning about COVID. So let's go ahead and run those numbers by you real quick. Um, if you hear that the number of COVID cases are going up, well, they're not. And I'll tell you, I ran the numbers from John Hopkins, and that's the dashboard that I've been using for months. The 7 day average from the previous 7 days were 483 new cases. The current 7 day running average is 469. So they are not going up; they're actually going down. They are ticking down, or maybe really starting to just level off a little bit. Leveling on the leveling off of cases is typical of herd immunity. Um, in the population here in Hillsborough County, where I live, there are 1,400,000 people, a little bit more than 1 million, not 100 million. Good God, traffic would be rough. 1,400,000 people. Of that population, 9.33% of that population has contracted COVID at some point, and that number is going to continue to rise because it's cumulative. Okay, so when that number continues to rise, I don't think there's really any need for alarm, because it's going to continue to rise every time somebody else gets it, whether they get it today or whether they get it 10 years from now. You understand? Now, another number that is cumulative and will continue to rise is a more important number. The number of people in Hillsborough County, where I live, which is in West Central Florida, that have succumbed to COVID or with COVID. Of the population here in Hillsborough County, which is 1,400,000 plus people, right now, 0.118% of the Hillsborough County population has succumbed to COVID or has succumbed with COVID. Which is if this is a percent, one tenth of a percent is about right here. If this is a percent, 1/10 is about right here. So there you go. And I think with people getting COVID and recovering, combined with a lot of people who are taking the vaccination, we have in the state of Florida, I think we've vaccinated probably more than half of our population already. More than half. Thank you, Governor DeSantis. There you go. All right. Well, that's the good news. Today we're going to hear from our friend Tim Bryce, so that's exciting. And we got 3 stories that are going to hopefully encourage you to let you know that not everything is the doom and gloom that they might tell you that it is. There are pockets of resistance, and we need to push those. We need to acknowledge that not everything is what mainstream media says it is. There's other stuff going on. Let's not be so focused on what the devil's doing, and let's look at what God's doing. How about that? Alrighty now. Okay, so we're going to take a little break. We'll be back with more of the Morning Report right after these messages. If you are a true blue conservative, small businesses are near and dear to your heart. They are the lifeblood of our life and economy. I believe this, and that's why my florist is not a website or phone number. My florist is Blooming Days Flower Shop, Tampa's premier flower shop. At 11618 North Florida Avenue here in Tampa, Florida, and at 6835 State Road 54 in Newport Richey. Call Christine at 813-933-1942 and at 727-232-6900. She can also be reached on the web at www.bloomingdays.com. Well, hey everybody, my name is Willie Lawson, and you guys know that I do a lot of stuff on the internet, and you may think with what's happening on Twitter and what's happening on Facebook and what happened to Parler that the mainstream social media sources are really trying to rid themselves of conservative voices, and you'd be right. They most certainly are. But you know what? It isn't as bad as you think it is. It's worse. But there are people who are willing to be platformed for free speech. One of those places is freedomforum.website. Freedomforum.website. You can go there and speak your mind. So come join us. Enjoy the freedom. Enjoy the fun. All right. Well, welcome back. We appreciate you being here. All righty. Let's see. Let's get this started. There's been a lot of talk about the Ma'Khia Bryant death up in Ohio, I believe it is. And, it is interesting how frankly, how a lot of us um, who have no training on how to be a police officer, no training at all, and wouldn't have a clue, frankly, a clue, a who hand chance in hell. My grandma used to say that. I don't have any idea what it means or if I'm even pronouncing it correctly, but um, what to do in those situations. But because we've seen too many movies and because we watch too much television or YouTube, or we think that Twitter is the real world, we have all decided that we know exactly what the police officer should have done. Now, what's interesting is that somebody that maybe a lot of people, a lot of us wouldn't think that would offer a voice of reason is doing just that. A lot of people from my part, my part of the world, wanted to see this woman as Joe Biden's vice president. All, and the irony is also a black woman who was in law enforcement. It is ironic, isn't it? So Representative Val Deming, Democrat from Florida, said Sunday on CBS's Face the Nation. Face the Nation. Mark Levin calls it Deface the Nation, which is, I think, is humorous. That she thought that the officer who fatally shot Ma'Khia Bryant in Columbus, Ohio, responded, quote, as he was trained to do. So anchor John Dickerson said, let me ask you about the George Floyd Policing Act and this awful incident, Ma'Khia Bryant in Ohio. So Dickerson already sort of took the question and formed it into something negative. And he was trying to, I think he was trying to elicit a response and sort of throw up a softball so she could nail it, so she could knock it out of the park in a way that, Dickerson thought that she would. However, this is what happened. Um, so he said, so under, as I understand it, under the legislation, federal officials, police officers, they would be restrained from using excessive force unless a third party was in danger and unless they couldn't de-escalate. Those seem to be the facts in the Bryant case, which means that under the standards set in the Floyd Policing Act, the officer in that case seems to have acted as they were trained and supposed to do. Deming said, well, John, when I served as police chief, what I prayed for daily was that my police officers would respond as they were trained to do. Now, after every incident, we would have to go back and look at our policies and make sure that our policies met the moment. But look, I worked as a social worker in the foster care, with foster care children, so it's a sad, sad moment for me. But I also was a patrol officer who was out there on the street having to make those split-second decisions. Now everybody has the benefit of slowing the video down and seizing the perfect moment. The officer on the street does not have that ability. Um, he or she has to make those split-second decisions, and they're tough. But the limited information that I know in viewing the video, it appears that the officer responded as he was trained to do, with the main thought of preventing a tragedy and the loss of life of the person who was about to be assaulted. Now, yeah, seems like that's what happened, didn't it? It seems like that's what happened. Val Demings. Now, Val Demings is not she's not a moderate. She's a full-fledged, ready to go Democrat progressive person. I don't think she's about defunding the police, but she's bought into basically everything else. Will Val Demings be canceled? Will this seemingly, as far as I'm concerned, rational adult viewpoint on this terrible thing, because when you gotta shoot a teenager, it's terrible. It's terrible. When teenagers put themselves, get in this position, it's terrible. Nobody's saying that it isn't. And that's the thing. Nobody's saying that it isn't. Will Black Lives Matter and other organizations take what Val Deming said on yesterday on CBS's Face the Nation as reasonable and maybe a position they can go with? I'm going to take it as reasonable and a position I can go with. How about you? All right, we're going to take a little break. We'll be back with more of the program right after these messages. Well, hey everybody, my name is Willie Lawson, and you guys know that I do a lot of stuff on the internet. And you may think with what's happening on Twitter and what's happening on Facebook and what happened to Parler that the mainstream social media sources are really trying to rid themselves of conservative voices. And you'd be right. They most certainly are. But you know what? It isn't as bad as you think it is. It's worse. But there are people who are willing to be platformed for free speech. One of those places is freedomforum.website. freedomforum.website. You can go there and speak your mind. So come join us. Enjoy the freedom. Enjoy the fun. If you are a true blue conservative, small businesses are near and dear to your heart. They are the lifeblood of our life and economy. I believe this, and that's why my florist is not a website or phone number. My florist is Bloomingdale's Flower Shop, Tampa's premier flower shop. At 11618 North Florida Avenue here in Tampa, Florida, and at 6835 State Road 54 in Newport Richey. Call Christine at 813-933-1942 and at 727-232-6900. She can also be reached on the web at www.bloomingdays.com. One of the things that I get asked most is where can I get information that is not tainted with liberal bias, especially here in the Tampa Bay area. Well, now I have the answer. tbctampa.com, a website by and for Tampa area conservatives. Tampa's leading conservative voices speak freely at tbctampa.com. And you can too. So join the fun and enjoy the freedom at tbctampa.com. My name is Willie Lawson, and this is the Morning Report. Alrighty, again, welcome back. We appreciate you coming to the program today. With the police shootings and all this stuff, race is back on the front page. And seriously, and some of y'all may not agree with me, but that's okay. I think it's interesting that with the election of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, when you connect it to just 4 years previous, 8 years of Barack Obama and Joe Biden, and all these people who are in Congress and all the BLM, you would think that a lot of these things would be worked out, right? You would think. But apparently they are not. Apparently we're still talking about the concept of systemic racism. Okay, before I get into this story, I want people to understand. Redlining exists. It just does. It did, and it still exists to a degree. It does. It is the data that doesn't suggest but tells that, especially in California under Kamala Harris, and thanks to the crime bill, written by, for the most part, by Joe Biden, that young black men spent more time in prison for minor marijuana offenses than their white counterpart. That's just real. And I named some of the people who are responsible for that. However, if we're talking about systemic racism and it existing, where's it come from? Who's keeping it going? And does everybody buy it? Well, not everybody buys it. As a matter of fact, Kentucky's Black Attorney General says, yeah, nah. Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron, a prominent Republican office holder in a red state that happens to be African American, tossed several buckets of cold water on the left's contention that America is systemically racist. That's that whole 1619 Project thing during a Sunday appearance on Fox News Sunday morning futures. Well, no, I don't believe this country is systemically racist, Cameron told anchor Maria Bartiromo. What I believe is that this country has always tried from the very beginning to become a more perfect union. And certainly we've had our challenges throughout this nation's history, which is everybody, really. And nobody's hiding from that. But when you hear comments like you heard from President Biden and others that throw fuel on the fire, that explode the tensions that we have in this country, that's not good for hoping to unify the country. And so for my part, I try to stay away from hyperbolic terms, which is problematical for the AG, because we are at a place where just not going along with the mainstream narrative is in itself become hyperbolic. And that's a shame. Cameron was referring to comments made last week by Biden in response to the guilty on all counts verdict by the Derek Chauvin trial jury. George Floyd's death, Biden claimed, this is what our president claimed, ripped the blinders off the whole world to see the systemic racism. That is a stain on our nation's soul. 1984 crime bill that helped militarize the police. Weren't you responsible for? Your vice president put more black and brown people in prison in California than anywhere else in recent history? Huh. That's not a stain on the soul. Didn't you put some of that stain there, Mr. Biden? Anyway, I love this high power. The knee on the neck of justice for Black Americans, the profound fear and trauma, the pain, the exhaustion that Black and Brown Americans experience every single day. Okay, that's extremely hyperbolic and emotional, and I guess a lot of people will. It's easy to go along with all that. I don't feel that exhaustion. Frankly, I never have. Um, and I'm not special. Most people just go about their lives every day. Some frustrate, there's frustration that happens. There's things that, quite frankly, piss you off. Um, but most of it, and then some days we can't stop laughing at stuff, right? Um, but this whole idea, this whole narrative that Black and brown people are walking around with 100 pounds of chains on us every day. First of all, it's not true. Let's just say it. I'll say it. First of all, it's not true. It isn't true. So the writer of this article says, wow, when you read words like that, you'd almost be forgiven for thinking Black Americans were one step removed from chattel slavery. And I think that that's the deal. And unfortunately, there are people who buy it. There are so-called Black conservatives who buy it, who buy into this narrative that we're just that things haven't changed. Like, could you hear it? And basically, you hear from people who are my age, and I'm the big 6-0. Way to go. Um, who are my age and a little older, who are still saying, "Well, things ain't changed that much." Well, yeah, they have. Yeah, they have. Get out of the hood, drive around. Oh, because you can drive around. See where people live. See who they're living with. See who they're making children with. See the crosses that aren't being burned in their yard. See the positions that they have. See the businesses that they own. See the homes that they own. No, things are different. And wonder out loud why there are people who are saying that things aren't different, that things are actually worse than they were in 1962. They're worse than they were in 1957. They're worse than they were in 1932 or 1865. Wonder aloud why people are saying that. Do they have something to gain by saying that? You know, so it's obviously absurd that such rhetoric is a powerful tool. The myth of systemic racism, of course, is nothing more than a rhetorical ploy by the leftists to gain power. Yeah, unfortunately, and the power they get, and I'll be honest, the power that they gain doesn't go to help Black people. It doesn't go to help Black neighborhoods. It doesn't go to help Black communities. It doesn't go to help Black schools. It doesn't. It doesn't. It gains power for white leftists. Just saying. Just saying. Look at who holds the purse strings and the marionette strings, and see if I ain't right. Now you may not. Now those of you who are viewing this may not like what I'm saying. I get it. That's fine. But see if I'm not right. If you're gonna be mad, then be mad. Once you find out who's pulling the strings, who's funding these things and getting benefit from them, then you can be angry. So, indeed, views of Americans on all races on race relationship trended at 2/3 higher positive for most of the century. People, for most of the century, most everybody was like, yeah, things are better. Things are better. And that culminated in with the election of Barack Obama as president of the United States. For a lot of people, that was a seminal moment where, oh my goodness, look how far we've come. Look at where we started and look at where we are now. And a lot of people were all cool with it. But around 2014, when BLM took advantage of some tragic yet rare, some horrible, but some rare police killings to launch their year-long reign of terror across U.S. cities. Of course, as we stated earlier, we have challenges in this country, but the promise of a more perfect union is always one step away, always one step closer, Cameron continued. And I think that together we can get there if we put aside these hyperbolic terms. And if we put aside this casting aspersions on one another, if we hold hands and walk together to our future. The Kentucky Attorney General added that he is excited to see what South Carolina's Senator Tim Scott, another prominent black Republican lawmaker, has to say about the vision of this country when he gives the GOP response to Biden's speech on Wednesday. So there you go. It is hard. It is tough to have these conversations, but we need to start having these conversations. We just need to. And it's tough. And not everybody wants to do it. I get it. Not everybody wants to do it. So it's left to me, I guess. All right, we haven't heard from our friend Jim Bryce in a while. And the Bryce is right. But we're going to change that. We're going to change that right now, as a matter of fact. So let me click the button. And then those of you who are watching on YouTube, you will get to hear it too. We'll be back right after this.
This is Tim Bryce with my column titled "The Jim Crow Shtick." When it comes to voting reform, Democrats gleefully point at their pending H.R. 1 For the People Act, which they claim will make voting accessible to more people, most of whom are illegal aliens. When the Republicans push for voter reform, such as what was recently implemented in Georgia, the Democrats accuse them of implementing racially designed Jim Crow laws. Even President Biden called the Georgia law, quote, Jim Crow in the 21st century, end quote, as well as many other Democrats and left-leaning media personnel. Some of us are old enough to remember Jim Crow laws, but most of the voters today haven't a clue regarding its background and its applicability today. Let's try to clear this up. Following the American Civil War, the country entered a period of reconstruction of the South. This consisted of laws devised by Northern Republicans to get the South back on its feet economically while securing the civil rights of the former slaves. Over time, federal troops withdrew from the South, and Democrats took control of the state assemblies and governor mansions. To combat Republican policies, these Dixiecrats implemented sweeping rules and regulations depriving blacks of their civil rights, particularly in the areas of segregation, land ownership, and voting, thereby catering to white control. In effect, they were able to turn the clock backwards to before the Civil War without having to enslave anyone. Over time, Dixiecrats' power grew in parallel with the rise of the Ku Klux Klan. In particular, both groups grew to prominence during the Wilson administration and beyond. It finally ended in 1964 with the passage of the Civil Rights Act under President Lyndon Johnson. The rules devised by the Southern Democrats came to be referred to as Jim Crow, which was named after a theater character stereotyping blacks from the early part of the 19th century. Such laws defined where a black could go to school, where to eat and drink, shop, reside, ride a bus, vote, and many other oppressive stipulations. Interestingly, now the Republicans are being accused of enacting similar laws. It is rather ironic the party of Lincoln, who fought for the freedom of slaves, is being falsely accused of such nonsense. Let us not forget, not one Republican president owned a slave. The Democrats cannot claim otherwise. Today's Republicans are simply angling to stop illegal voting, such as fraudulent and duplicate voting. This is why they are in favor of such things as voter identification, verifying signatures, review of voter rolls, and so on, none of which is in the Democrats' H.R. 1 bill. In fact, H.R. 1 would simplify voter cheating if enacted. Instead, Democrats claim Republican voter initiatives would prohibit people from voting. Hence, they claim it is racist and akin to Jim Crow. Of course, this is an old tactic used by the radical left to try and bully people and has nothing to do with reality. It is a familiar shtick to falsely cast aspersions on others while they themselves are the true culprits trying to undermine the system for political gain. What we have to realize is those who falsely claim others are racist are truly the racists themselves. You can call the Republicans whatever you want, but you cannot distort the truth, especially when it comes to Jim Crow. Frankly, this tactic has been used so many times, I doubt if it is effective any longer. However, as long as the populace remains ignorant of our history, such as who the true designers of Jim Crow laws were, we will continue to produce a sucker every minute. Then again, some people like to be deceived. Friends, keep the faith. This is Tim Bryce in Palm Harbor, Florida. Follow me on the internet at timbryce.com.
All right, we're back. We're back. Thank you ever so much. Thanks, Tim, for doing what you do, man. Because you know what, you cannot like it, but you can't break the argument, and that's what it's all about. All right. A lot of you don't know, and I didn't know until yesterday, I guess, that the Academy Awards were last night. And apparently, apparently there were something that was noteworthy. Now, this is the year, I think, that Hollywood should have enjoyed the most as the elitist that they are, because no one's seen. First of all, we always say, well, whatever the best movie, best picture, whatever. No one had seen it anyway, because a lot of those pictures were an early release or limited release or whatever. So we hadn't seen these movies anyway, and now they can really have a little cabal, because most of the major cities, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, or under these massive lockdowns, and truly no one's been to the movies. Even the people who I love to watch the cinema have been to the movies because of these massive lockdowns and theaters have been closed. So they could really have a little inside baseball, inside Hollywood party. And no one cares, because no one's seen any of these movies. No one. I mean, almost literally no one. So of course there was going to be, everything leftist, everything to disparage police, and everything to race bait, and everything to celebrate the election of Kamala Harris, everything, which was going to push a lot of people away, based on now that we've not seen any of the movies, and now you're going to push a bunch of leftist things that a lot of us just don't want to see. We're not going to spend our Sunday night watching. It's easy. There wasn't any calls to boycott the Oscars. The Oscars, I didn't leave the Oscars. The Oscars left me. So while some Hollywood celebrities used their acceptance speeches at the 93rd Academy Awards to disparage police, Tyler Perry, and this is surprising to me, honestly, went viral for a good reason. Perry, who won the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award at the 93rd Academy Awards, used his time on stage to urge Americans to, quote, refuse hate, end quote. Here's something that Perry said. It is my hope that all of us would teach our kids, just refuse to hate. Don't hate anybody. The actor and director said, I refuse to hate someone because they are Mexican, or because they are black, or because they are white, or LGBTQ, ... I refuse to hate someone because they are a police officer. And I'm sure in that atmosphere, you could hear colons snapping shut all over that auditorium. I refuse to hate someone because they're Asian. I would hope that we refuse hate. Perry, who was once homeless, also shared a touching story about an encounter he had with a homeless woman outside the studio. His first reaction was to go offer her some money, but that's not what she wanted. He said, he reached into his pocket and she said, "Excuse me, sir, do you have any shoes?" He said at the moment stopped for him in his tracks because he remembered being homeless, with shoes bent inward at the heels. He said he took her into the studio and they were surrounded by boxes and racks of clothes. He remembered the woman looking down at her feet. He said when she looked up, she had tears in her eyes. She said, "Thank you, Jesus, my feet are off the ground." He said that he related to the woman because his mother grew up in the Jim Crow South in rural Louisiana, and as a young woman, she grieved the deaths of the civil rights boys and girls who died in Birmingham, Alabama, in the church bombing. He said it is his hope that parents teach their children what he learned as a boy and just refuse to hate. Perry went on to dedicate his award to those who want to stand in the middle no matter what's around the walls. Stand in the middle because that's where the healing happens, he continued. That's where the conversation happens. That's where change happens. It happens in the middle, so anyone who wants to meet me in the middle, refuse to hate, refuse to blanket judgment, and help lift someone's feet off the ground. This one is for you too. Now, I didn't see part of his quote saying that I refuse to hate anybody just because they're white. But I'm gonna go with what Tyler Perry says. I refuse to hate someone because they're Asian. I refuse to hate someone because they're black. I refuse to hate somebody because they're LGBTQ. ... I refuse to hate somebody because someone says I'm supposed to. I refuse to hate somebody because their name is Donald Trump. I refuse to hate someone because they're a Republican. I refuse to hate somebody because they're a Democrat. I refuse to hate somebody because they're a progressive. I refuse to hate. I refuse. Now let's get some terms straight here. That doesn't mean I have to agree with you. That doesn't mean I have to grab your banner and run around with it like it's mine. It doesn't mean that we can't have discussions, that we aren't going to have discussions, hard discussions. That's not what it means. Just because I disagree with you doesn't mean I hate you. It just means that I disagree with you. I don't hate Gator fans, but I disagree with you. Okay? You feel me? Because in order to have a free society, we have to be first, educated. Second, we have to be moral. And third, we have to be mature. My name is Willie Lawson. This has been the Morning Report. It is April 26, 2021. If you're watching on YouTube, there's all sorts of stuff in the description box. And there is a link to our merchandise store. You can go there and help us out. We appreciate it. So until we see you again, go out there and learn something, love somebody, and for goodness sakes, y'all take care of yourself. We will see you when we see you. Bye-bye now.